The best solution to loneliness might just be what? Well, find out, watch this video. Hi, my name is Jesse. Welcome to the channel Open Source Owners, where we talk about what would it be like if humans had an owner's manual. Dun, 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 dun. The answer is service, and we're going to put some numbers behind this idea that giving of yourself to others, to a greater good, it could be nature, it could be animals, it could be other humans, is one of the best things we can do to prevent the epidemic of loneliness, like we talked about in the last video. If you haven't seen that latest video, go ahead and click somewhere around here. I'll try to put it in this video. That last video talks about the epidemic of loneliness. One of the antidotes to that is service. We are still in the social domain, so we're focusing on the social aspect of being a human. You might argue that service is also a spiritual domain. It ties into the spiritual domain. All right, so let's get into it. There are moments when the heart is generous, and then it knows that for better or worse, our lives are woven together here, one with one another, and with the place and all living things. Great quote by Wendell Berry. If you've never checked out Wendell Berry, he's always worth reading. Excellent author, excellent American writer and thinker. Generosity, service, or volunteering and altruism are linked with higher levels of happiness and lower rates of depression. So, even if you're depressed, it may seem counterintuitive, but helping others is one of the fastest, smoothest, easiest ways to improve your depression and to improve your happiness. Financial generosity in America. 3 to 8% give 10% or more of their income. And obviously, we'll talk about the fact that this is a privileged position for many people to be in. But nonetheless, let's just hold this frame. 3 to 8% of the American population gives 10% or more of their income. Of the people who give away 10% or more, 38% are considered to be very happy by, some survey, and 10% are somewhat or very unhappy. Okay? Compare that to those who give less than 10% of their income or none at all, and that would be 28% are very happy, so a 10% difference there, and 15% are somewhat or very happy, so a 5% increase there, so that gives a 15% spread. Okay, let's put things into context here. 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. So obviously that's another issue, another social issue, another cultural issue or finance issue that undergirds this idea of how can we serve others when we ourselves, our basic needs in a sort of Maslow's hierarchy are not quite being met. So we got to keep that in mind. But as we do keep that in mind, we still want to not dismiss service as being a critical feature of the human experience, but also maybe a critical avenue or pathway to get us back to a more connected citizenry, a more connected world, a more connected individual, which would improve happiness. All right, back to service. 50% of helpers helping others reported feeling high or what is sometimes called the giver's glow. And that is essentially a combination of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Oxytocin is a well-known pain reliever effect. So people who help others routinely feel sort of high or good from it. Now, it's not to say that you should selfishly want to help others, but there is a selfish benefit that we get. Usually those who give gifts feel better about giving them than people who received gifts. If we're searching for service in terms of helping others, just keep in mind that it also helps you. It actually gives you a benefit, a high, a giver's glow. It makes you feel better in life. 43% felt stronger and more energetic. I don't know about you, but many people I know could use more energy and are feeling energy depleted. So anything we can do to boost that is good. All right, pain and depression drop when individuals counsel those with similar conditions as themselves. So maybe a depressed person counsel a depressed person, or somebody who is really struggling to pay the bills counsels somebody who is also struggling to pay the bills. When they did that, for just 15 minutes, pain and depression levels began to drop. So this is the power of just connecting and having sort of that opposite of the disconnection issue and serving others in whatever way that we can. Volunteers, if you volunteer for 2 or more organizations, that equals a 44% reduction in mortality over a 5-year period. So this isn't just, I do it because it feels good. It's, I do it because it actually improves the quality of my life, the longevity of my life, and the health of my life. Pretty amazing what it means to be a human nested in a society where we can help others or we can not. We can be isolated and more individualized. There's a 40% drop in blood pressure if you volunteer for 4 hours a week or more. 68% of volunteers said that the volunteering made them feel physically healthier. So not just mentally, but like in a physical way, the energy thing, the embodied empowerment. 89% of people who volunteer reported that it has improved my sense of well-being. 89%. That's an incredible number. That's, you know, almost everybody feels that giving, serving, volunteering in some way, shape, or form improves their general sense of well-being, improves their mortality, improves their energy, improves their pain and depression levels. There's no reason not to do it, except if we are just so struggling in our own circumstance that we can't do much beyond, you know, get ourselves fed or get our family fed or get water or pay the bills just to get by, right? Which unfortunately, as we saw earlier, most of us in America anyway are very close to that threshold. 73% of people who engage in service say that it lowered my stress levels. Not only does it improve mortality, improve energy, improve pain, depression, and your sense of well-being, but it also lowers stress levels, which stresses at epidemic levels as well, unfortunately. Let's talk really quickly about disconnection syndrome. This is a phrase coined by the Perlmutters. David Perlmutter and his son wrote a book called Brainwash, and in that book, they coined the term disconnection syndrome. And here's a quote from that book. Our brains are increasingly running on a program controlled by others, namely commercial interests, hoping to capture the primitive brain's desire for instant gratification. Other people talk about this as hypernormal stimuli. The idea that you have a smartphone in your pocket, most of us do nowadays, that can connect us to any manner of distraction or base or primitive desires, from porn to people getting hit in the face to just silly memes to fear porn to all sorts of things that can capture our brain's dopamine circuits and as well as our attentional circuits. And that's really what places like Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and these places are really all about. And it's even called time on screen. These companies don't charge you anything for their services. What they charge is for advertisers to get in front of your eyes. And they do that. Their business model requires them to have each of their users spend more time on screen. So whatever sort of content hacks the primitive brain's desires for instant gratification and novelty, those are the things that will algorithmically be selected for. And that's called hypernormal stimulation. We have so much more stimulation than we've ever been able to sort of contend with as a human species. And our brains, our poor evolutionarily designed brains, are not equipped for this level of hypernormal stimulation. And so all of this results in, amongst all sorts of factors going on in society, what they term disconnection syndrome. We are fundamentally feeling disconnected from ourselves, from nature, and from other people. And it's typified here as we read, the rate of young adults with suicidal thoughts or other suicide-related outcomes increased 47% from 2008 to 2017, like a 10-year window. And that's only gotten worse. It's jumped another 10% or so from the COVID pandemic. So when we have young adults feeling like it's a better option to take themselves out of life and kill themselves, with all the pain that that involves, from their personal pain that they experience if they attempt suicide to the pain of the family and the friends and the animals and all that sort of stuff, they're still, nonetheless, these young adults are feeling that suicide is a legitimate way out of this pain that they're experiencing, right? This study also found a 71% increase in young adults experiencing serious psychological distress in the previous 30 days from that same time frame, right? So 71% increase in psychological distress. All of this information is basically just saying one thing: we're on the wrong path. We're becoming more disconnected. And we know that psychologically, sociologically, humans function much better when we are connected. We don't connect to raw nature. We don't feel skilled or empowered. We feel disempowered and unskilled. And all of this is pointing to these increases in these numbers that we're seeing sort of on a day-to-day basis. Another one, the rate of antidepressant prescriptions is up by more than 400% since the 90s. You would hope with that much antidepressant medication being prescribed that we would see rates of depression going down, but in fact, we see rates of depression going up worldwide. Over 450 million people are affected by clinical depression every single year. And that's now the #2 cause of disease and disability for the whole world. So something, again, we're moving in the wrong direction. We want to sort of reverse. We want to reconnect with something deeper and more rich. And what we're talking about here is service as a particular aspect of that. 42% of the time that Americans are awake, their eyes are on a screen. That's 6 hours, almost 7 hours a day that Americans' eyes are on a screen. And that's probably true for most of the Western countries of the world. That in and of itself is not necessarily a problem, though I would say that number needs to come down a bit, especially if it's like, well, the other 6 hours of the day, if citizens were invested and deeply embedded into their natural environment and doing work with other humans, well, then at least we would have some balance. But we don't have that counterbalance. We have a lot of screen time and a lot of social isolation and individual psyche isolation time, which basically all equals disconnection syndrome. It equals struggling and difficult times for anybody living in those circumstances. And insomnia also affects about 25% of Americans, so 1 in 4 Americans. And I put this in here because we know that blue light exposure, particularly to screens, non-native blue light, if we're not mitigating the blue light, that's going to mess up our circadian rhythm, and that can happen even within 1 exposure to blue light, let alone almost 7 hours a day of blue light being in and out of the eyeball, whether the sun's up or the sun's down. Most people are not mitigating their blue light exposure, and as a result, we're seeing something like 1 in 4 people having insomnia, which is another horrifying number about, hey, America, we're heading in the wrong direction. Hey, Western civilization, something's not right here. We're going in the wrong direction. We need to reassess what it means to be a human alive on Earth. So what this channel would really like to focus on, much more than diagnosing the problems, though that is important, is really about like how we have solutions and how we engage in activity and behaviors that actually are moving the society in the direction that we want it to be in. Every behavior, every choice that you make and I make is a vote for the type of world that we want to live in. So let's make that vote count. Let's not just take this information and get more depressed and more despondent, but rather say something's got to change, and change has got to start with me first, right? Me and my loved ones, my partner, my small community first, and then those natural resonances will occur at larger and larger scales. Okay, so here are some examples of how we can have this reunion away from this disconnection syndrome to more of a connection-based world. Citizens become powerful when they choose to shift the context within which they act in the world. So the context is in part driving citizens to feel disconnected, suicidal, depressed, stuck. Communities are human systems, so, right? Communities are not about a government per se. It's about the humans living within it. And those systems are given form by conversation. So the conversation, just communicating directly with your fellow neighbors and your fellow community members, is how communities are really built and stitched together or woven together. And those conversations build relatedness and a shared space. Some sense making is shared by citizenry when they can communicate with each other on the regular. When we're disconnected, when we're involved in screen time with algorithms that are deciding which particular version of information that we're going to get to conform to our own activity of staying on the screen longer, right? Then we have fundamentally people who can't make sense together. There's a wide gap between the world, reality, and then shared sense making. So these conversations then that build relatedness most often occur and best occur, I would say, through voluntary groups, or sometimes it's called associational life. And this is where citizens are unpaid and show up by choice, rather than in larger systems where professionals are paid to show up by contractual agreement. So in other words, the best way to restitch and to reunite our communities and our own citizenry is through voluntary connection. And we should probably make it fun. We should probably make it very broad and not super niche, so that we can get as many people as possible involved. And a great resource for all communities is this book by Tom Atlee, which you can get if you click the link below, I'll link to this book if you want to buy it. It's called Empowering Public Wisdom, A Practical Vision of Citizen-Led Politics. And it goes through, I don't know, I want to say about 50 to 75 different examples of like, solutions for empowering public wisdom, where you can get groups of disparate people together with not shared, beliefs politically or socially or whatnot, and still through processes, through basic protocols, allow people to come on the same page and to have all these points of view be shared and heard, and then synthesizing it and getting all these disparate points of view to the best possible outcome. You might be surprised at with some of the examples that he shares within this book at truly how wise the solutions these random groups of people can come up with when you get them together with a good process. And again, they're not paid. It's a voluntary, citizen-driven thing. So let's say there's 50 different types of public wisdom structures or solutions within this book. Well, that's 50 different things that we can play with within our community. And again, I would caution and encourage, if you do this, try to make it fun, try to make it an enjoyable thing, try to make it seem like it's not a burden, because if we're asking people to voluntarily give their time or to serve to this type of thing, then we want to sort of like entice it by not making it seem like school or work or something else they have to do. Now, one of the ways that we can encourage that, promote that, is when we engage in these public wisdom activities is to create systems that will continue. So like you might do a resource and a needs list anytime you get together community members, and then we can just start to say, oh my gosh, so-and-so needs childcare on this day. Well, I have freedom that day. I'd like to do that for them. So when you do a needs and resources list and you start having people's needs get met just from within the community for free, then it becomes much more advantageous to go to a public wisdom practice session or something like that, rather than just say, come and do this, please. You get no benefit out of it. So we want to see if we can thread into it some benefit for the people who come. And then what they'll notice, what individuals will notice, is the social benefits that come from volunteering, communicating, sharing, empathizing. You know, all the things that we had previously looked at in the positive will begin to filter into our public wisdom practices. So that's just one solution. I wanted to throw that out there. It's sort of a meta solution because this book and Tom Atlee's work has a ton of different sub-solutions that we could try and play with in our communities, in our towns, with our villages, etc. Thanks so much. You made it this far, and I want to give you some free ebooks, so click the links below. I just want to say thanks for anybody who makes it through a long video like this, and I write a lot of books, and I don't want to really sell them, so I just want to give them away. So click the link below, and some of those will come to you. This was the video. The best solution to loneliness might be service. And so serving your community, serving your neighbors, it will actually improve the quality of your life. We're not doing it out of a selfish thing, but we're recognizing that when we give to others and help others, we're actually helping the whole, including our own life, including our own relationships with those that we love. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope this was useful, interesting. Please comment. What did you notice about your own loneliness and your ability to serve or volunteer or give to others? Have you ever noticed a correlation between those two? Have you noticed your loneliness got worse over time when you stopped volunteering or going to your church or being involved with a community project that you loved? So let us know in the comments. I love to read those. Everybody loves to read the comments. It makes the video feel much more holistic and participatory instead of me just blathering at a camera in the middle of Michigan somewhere. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.